Hello everyone, my name is Lindsay Spears at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and this is my presentation on the information worlds of military sexual assault victims. So first let's define sexual assault. Um, this refers to a sexual contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. Some forms of sexual assault include attempted rape, fondling or unwanted sexual touching, forcing a victim to perform sexual acts such as oral sex or penetrating the perpetrator's body, and penetration of the victim's body, also known as rape. So a military sexual assault victim is anyone who is in the military and unfortunate enough to, experience a sexual assault. So why is this group important for us as information professionals? Um, I think a lot of people see us as gatekeepers of information, and this term has a lot of negative connotation in the information science world, but I think that on the outside, it can kind of be a good thing when people view librarians as a way to find information. The library should be a safe place that people can feel comfortable enough to come and inquire about information, which goes back to being people see librarians as knowledgeable. They see the library as an information hub. They should feel some sense of confidentiality within the library. A librarian's not going to go talk about what you've been searching, and most libraries make it so that you can't see what the patrons have been searching. There should be a feeling of community within your library. You should feel comfortable enough to ask for help, and it's free. Unfortunately, a lot of sexual assaults happen to marginalized groups, which can lead to a sense of information poverty. But everything at the library is free, so it's an awesome place to go for any information, and especially for those who have sensitive information that they want to find. So first, before I get into the ways that military sexual assault victims seek information, I want to just talk about some reasons why they may not seek information. And this goes for any kind of sexual assault victims, not just military. Denial. Some people just don't want to admit what happened to them. They don't want to think about it. They just want to ignore it and hope that it goes away. So that goes back into information avoidance. I think that sexual assault victims can often put themselves in their own sort of echo chamber where um, they're only hearing the information they want to hear and just avoiding everything else. Embarrassment or shame. Unfortunately, our society has kind of put a social stigma on sexual assault, and um, a lot of times sexual assault victims are blamed for their assault for, what they were wearing, what they were doing, who they were hanging out with. And sometimes you just don't want to admit it because you don't want to hear things like that. Um, Trust and belief in change. Sometimes sexual assault victims may have trusted the person who sexually assaulted them before the actual assault happened. And so they think that, oh, it won't happen again. They believe that that person will change. Maybe that person is telling them that they'll change. And then privacy. This kind of goes back to denial. Like you don't want to talk about it. You don't want people to know. You don't want people to judge you, and so on and so forth. As far as reporting sexual assaults in the military, there are two different types. There is restricted and unrestricted. With restricted, no official investigation is going to take place. You won't be able to get a military protective order against the person who assaulted you, and you won't be able to ask for a transfer to a different base or a different station away from your assaulter. Um, and once this is reported to the SARC, then or a healthcare personnel, you can receive care. And then there's unrestricted. An official investigation will be started if you file unrestricted. The police will be notified, the SARC will be notified, your commander will be notified, and in this case, that you can get medical, mental, and legal services to take action against the person who sexually assaulted you. Some possible problems with this. Your commander or your first sergeant, the first sergeant's kind of like an advocate for all the people in your squadron or the people that you work with directly in the same job as you. And so if your commander or your first sergeant or the person that sexually assaulted you, where do you go? That can be a very difficult situation. And then there's a very big one. Lack of training. People like the first sergeant are supposed to have training for situations that involve sexual assault and lots of other situations, but a lot of times, they're not confident enough in their ability to properly respond to something like this that can be very emotionally scarring. So maybe they just pass you on to someone else, or maybe they just, don't do a good job of helping you, unfortunately. So here is some military specific reasoning for not um, reporting. So military behavior can reinforce sexual violence. There's a hierarchy in the military. Um, Big things with the chain of command going on there. You're getting orders. You're supposed to obey those orders. Um, the military kind of has an attitude of just deal with it, get over it. You don't have a choice, so you might as well just live with it. So that can kind of transfer over into how people respond to their sexual assaults. And then distorted views of the attacker through previous interactions. So we're going back to this that I discussed earlier. So you may think that, oh, that person's a good soldier who assaulted you. They do their job well. They're respectful to others. Everyone in the same job likes them. And then there's fear of job security or advancement. So in the military, you get like a yearly report card basically on your job performance. It includes things like volunteer work and other things like that. But if the person who sexually assaulted you is a person that's directly in power over you, then they could really affect your job negatively, your advancement negatively. And then fear of judgment. In the military, you can't quit. Like, that's not a choice. You can't just quit and get another job or go to a different job area. You have no control over that for the most part. So if you say that someone sexually assaulted you and that person is popular or whatever amongst your workmates, then they may judge you, however unfair that is. Fear of power or a trusted figure. So basically it is what it is. So you're afraid of what that person in power will do to you if you file a report against them. Reputation, and this goes back to Goffman's face threat. So if you have created this perception of who you are and who you are at work and who you are when you're not at work, and talking about a sexual assault, people may be afraid that it can affect their reputation negatively. Confusion on reporting procedures. It's not always clear in the military how exactly you're supposed to report something like that. And, sometimes you want to do an unrestricted reporting, but you don't know that there is restricted. So it's just very confusing. And then there's the healthcare, and honestly, the healthcare just isn't good. I'm just going to leave it at that. And then intimidation. The military is male dominated, and if you're a woman who has been sexually assaulted, it may be something that you don't want to talk to about with a man if a man was the person who sexually assaulted you. And then let's get into repercussions of treatment avoidance. So PTSD is a big one. There's actually a higher risk. There's actually a higher risk associated with sexual trauma when compared to returning combat veterans, which is crazy. Depression, anger, loss of relationships or intimacy, or inability to maintain them. That's a big one. Sexual assault can really scar you emotionally, and you may not want to open up again, even if you love the people close to you. And isolation. A lot of times people in the military forget that there is a civilian world, or they don't really associate with civilians because you're pretty much surrounded by military 24/7. So this can have a life in the round effect. Like you feel very separated from those on the outside, as you can say. And then trust issues, you just may not want to get close enough to someone again for a sexual assault to happen, or just avoid people altogether. So where is information sought for military sexual assault victims? Community groups, things like Planned Parenthood support groups. They have military groups on base as well. You have access to things like that. Private Facebook groups are pretty popular, and this goes back to Dervin's sense-making theory, and also with blogging and the hotlines down below. So you just sometimes sexual assault victims just need to talk to someone. That's the biggest thing they need, is they just need to talk about what happened so they can make sense of what happened. There's the VA, the Veterans Affairs for military members or veterans, and they have a lot of resources for sexual assault victims. And then there's schools and veteran groups and programs within those schools and on the outside of those schools. College campuses are really good nowadays with having lots of support for any situation you have. And, I have no qualms about if something had happened to me as far as a sexual assault, I can go to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and I can get some resources and some help from them. And here are just some links to some private Facebook groups, Planned Parenthood, the RAINN hotline, and the VA that I found for specifically for sexual assault victims and military sexual assault victims. So how can we help? So we, as librarians, we can make information more available at the reference desk, bulletin boards. We can aid in information seeking. If someone comes to you asking a sensitive question like how to get help for sexual assault, be open, be helpful, don't be judgmental. We can form support groups and meetings at the library. We can help improve outreach through public response organizations. They're not always very actually organized with their information. So as a librarian, we can help them print out materials, be a little bit more succinct, and just be more organized and make things more available at somewhere like a library. We can assist with post-assault situations, forensic reports, etc. You can train your staff in sexual violence training. You can share your experience if you've been unfortunate enough to experience a sexual assault. And then collaboration just goes back to helping improving outreach through the public response organizations and collection development. Try to really have a broad range of sources found in your library and try to stay away from things that promote rape culture. So some important things to know. Women are 20 times more likely to experience military sexual trauma. 20 to 30% of women experience sexual trauma during their service. That's a huge number, and that's really sad. Marginalized groups have a higher risk of sexual trauma. Openly gay or bisexual men are more likely to report their sexual trauma and seek help. And in a study of 219 males, those penetrated had a significantly lower rate of reporting when compared to those who were sexually assaulted in a different way. So what? So what does all of this mean? Sexual assault's not going away. It never will, I'm sure, and that's really unfortunate. So it's important for people to be more vocal and come to the forefront about their experiences so that we can learn from them. As we saw in the Brett Kavanaugh hearing, I can't think of her name right now, but the woman who testified against him, that was big. That's she was going against a lot of powerful people, and she was really an inspiration for a lot of women or women and men, I'm sorry, that have been sexually assaulted. And more can be done. We can always try to be more helpful with sensitive situations like this. We can always create more organizations. We can always be more open to dialogue. Just more can be done. And there's my bibliography. And yeah, so that is my presentation. This is Lindsay Spears from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Thank you.